Hi. Um, Sorry we missed the last couple weeks. I was really sick and had no voice. So here we are, and we're going to try to cram a lot into just a few minutes, about 12 minutes if you can hang in there. I felt like it was important to just talk a little bit about trauma and what trauma is and how it might impact those of us on the team. Basically, our bodies and brains are built to be able to kind of assimilate the things that happen to us, integrate it into our story, make sense of things. When something dangerous happens, for our body to realize when it's over and we're safe again. Um, what happens with trauma is when it overwhelms our system's ability to do that. So when trauma's on board, we aren't able to integrate what happened. We might not realize whatever was going on that wasn't safe is over. I mean, we might cognitively realize, but somewhere deep inside, we're still very much on edge. Um, we're holding on to a lot of things that just haven't been able to get integrated into the rest of our life. People usually think of trauma as the big T kind of events, like being in the military or being assaulted or surviving a life-threatening accident, something like that. Um, Little T events can also be traumatic. An illness, ending of a relationship, chronic emotional, verbal abuse. Um, Lots of other things can result in a person being traumatized. Uh, some of the common themes, two common themes with a person becoming traumatized are a sense of helplessness and a sense of horror. So those are always there when there's trauma. And people are very different. What one person might experience as trauma, another person might not, and vice versa. So it's not about the event as much as it is about what's going on with the person. There's a lot of things that we don't have time to go into here that might impact whether or not a person's going to be traumatized by something. But just to give you a little bit of idea what happens neurobiologically with trauma, if my hand here is going to be is a brain, okay? So the fingers up here, that's the frontal lobes, that's the working memory, that's the rational brain. It's where we do our problem solving, cognitive thinking. The middle part of our brain here, that's the limbic system. Our emotional memories are stored there. Trauma memories are stored there. Fight and flight response is there. The brainstem down here, that is the reptilian brain. That's the kind of responses that are automatic, our heart rate, our breathing. So trauma gets stored in the limbic system. It gets stored in the middle brain. It's stored in images, emotions, sensory material, things to do with our five senses, beliefs. And when a trauma gets triggered, that just means some signal, something that could have been a little bit similar in some way, bypasses the frontal lobe. That signal hits the middle brain. The middle brain thinks you're back in the trauma, and all the alarm bells go off, tell your body you're not safe, and you can get flooded with the images, the beliefs, the emotions, all the things from the time of the trauma. Just a little example of this would be of how a trigger works. Kevin, a couple of years ago, fell on the ice, and he was by his truck. He reached out to grab the truck to break his fall, but instead of breaking his fall, he actually ripped his shoulder out of the socket, dislocated his shoulder. Extraordinarily painful. I asked him the other day, I said, so are you still nervous when you get on the ice? And he said, only when there's a vehicle around. But it's not anything that he thinks. He doesn't think about it. It just bypasses his thinking brain, and his system will tighten up. He'll tense up, and his heart rate will increase just for a moment, and he'll realize, oh, it's okay. I'm not falling. I'm not ripping my shoulder out. But in an instant, his brain is taking that signal, ice, vehicle, putting it together and thinking that he's, ripping his shoulder out of his socket. So that's a little bit about how a trigger works. The way trauma gets stored, or the way it shows up for a person, is though you might have, may or may not have memory of the event, what it actually shows up as is symptoms. I'm going to show you this I'm going to give Janina Fisher credit on this. She is a trauma trainer here in the United States, and this little psychoeducational tool and some of the things I'm going to show are from her. But this is a little picture of what trauma is like. So trauma survivors have symptoms, excuse me, rather than memories. So some of the things that we see here: depression, irritability, loss of interest, numbing, decreased concentration, insomnia, getting emotionally overwhelmed, loss of sense of future, shame, worthlessness, maybe not even memories, nightmares, flashbacks, hypervigilance, that's really being on guard, mistrust, generalized anxiety or panic attacks, chronic pain, headaches, substance abuse, eating disorders, kind of feeling unreal or out of your body, self-destructive behaviors, a loss of a sense of who I am. All of these can be symptoms of trauma. And the thing that I wanted to talk about this is because vicarious trauma is a real thing. So what vicarious trauma is basically is when a person gets overwhelmed with someone else's story. So that's, I think, why it's just important for us to touch on this just for a minute. Another little thing that I think is a good example to try to think of this is this. We call this the window of tolerance. So let me bring it closer here so you can see it. When you're inside this window of tolerance right here, you're thinking and feeling at the same time. Your responses make sense to what is going, what's going on around you. So you might be really upset, or you might be really sad, or you might be really anxious, but you're still inside here. You're thinking and feeling at the same time. You're handling what's happening. Your emotions can go up and down. There's still a big range. The wider this range is, the easier it is to obviously to stay within here. When we get in a more traumatized state, we're bumping up here or down here. So when you're up here, that's when you've got things when you're emotionally overwhelmed. It's when panic might come on board, and really impulsive behaviors, that hypervigilance of really being on guard, defensiveness, feeling unsafe, reactive, angry, racing thoughts. Those are some of the things of being up here in that hyper arousal state. Down here on the bottom is more the things like being numb or dead, totally passive, maybe not having any feelings, no energy, hard to think, feel real disconnected. Shame shows up here, not able to say no, kind of loss of your boundaries. So when trauma comes onto board, when you're having trauma symptoms, you're getting outside of this window of tolerance. So always the key is to get back into the window of tolerance. Can also think of it in terms of you're somewhere else, you're not here. So if you're getting traumatized by somebody else's story, you have lost sense of your own self and your own story, your own life, and you're kind of immersed in somebody else. Or if it's your own trauma, you've lost a sense of the present situation. You might be back in 2014 or something and flooded with feelings and beliefs from a different time and space. So the answer is always we want to bring back to the brain, the frontal lobes back online again. So we need to get regrounded in the present, regrounded back in your own story, regrounded in 2019, regrounded in who you are. Some of the things that can help with that: deep breathing, observing non-judgmental observation of what is going on in your body. Just, wow, my heart's racing right now. I'm thinking these thoughts. Just kind of that standing outside of yourself, looking at yourself and observing. That part of our brain, that noticing brain, is actually connected to the limbic system, and so it can help calm things down. Once the limbic system gets a signal that, oh, we aren't in grave danger right now, that allows the brainstem to slow down and everything, the system, to go back the way it needs to. So 5 senses grounding, really taking a good hard look at your surroundings. What am I, what do I see, even down to the minutest detail, picking something up, looking at the texture, feeling the textures, smelling smells, getting yourself back grounded in your physical reality. I think it might be helpful for us to have something, whatever's going to help you, to remind yourself on the trip that you have a different story. You're here to help, but you have a different story, and that's okay. Your story matters too. You matter. And it's helpful to remember to call those things to mind if you start to get feeling overwhelmed. Journaling, anything that can wake up another part of your brain is helpful too. So sometimes it even helps people to do like a puzzle or something, just something that activates a different part of your brain. Once you get back into present reality, you're not dissociating, you're not getting overwhelmed and off somewhere, then your frontal lobes are back online. You're going to be able to sort things out, sort your emotions out, what's going on here, have conversations, and be able to sort things out. Well, that is a really super quick, really quick look at trauma, and hopefully that's a little bit helpful. And next week, hopefully we'll tape a little bit, just some conversations with some of the people here in Minnesota, 2 of the people that have already been over in Moria, and hopefully a couple others, and talk just a little bit about some of the other practical things that can help just dealing with all the things that we're going to be in the middle of. So have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you next week.